Okay, welcome back, everybody. And thank you very much and to those I talked to during the lunch break for this very positive feedback. Not only about the illustration of the wide reflexive equilibrium, but of the session as a whole. It seems it's an idea that should sustain, and for future projects we will consider that again, of course. That it seems we all get inspired and get a feel for the different perspectives. So we were in this theme of how do we bring so many people together, and so that everyone has a chance to participate in it. We don't want to act top down and tell commissioners this is the right way to do because we know it, but we want to listen to those who have to work with that first. And that's why now the work package 2 is not so prominent here. It kind of lurks behind everything. The whole idea of the work package 2 about the social labs is to provide a stage for all these stakeholders to come, and to stay in that image, to vibrate and make us learn something so that we can really generate knowledge that is viable in the end in the policy making. So we work with different people, and I think most of these stakeholders we don't need to talk about. We more or less know who they are. When we talk about industry, there's innovators in the widest sense. That is technical and scientific experts, engineers, scientists, designers, but there are also other groups, perspectives, CEOs, the management, and so on. CFOs are very powerful, I heard. So they all somehow, make decisions that are more or less affected by a Green Deal initiative. That's what we envision. Civil society, is represented probably by NGOs, by activists, and other groups. But what about this? And this is also a term in the proposal, of course. Citizen scientists. Depending on who I talk to, chemists are for some reason very afraid of them. They think of people having labs in their basements and say this is too. Other examples I heard are bird counting, which is a very efficient approach to get to hold track of changes of migratory routes and so on. But François, Jost, can you tell us who are these citizen scientists? What's their role in the project, and how do we interact with them?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So, what is citizen science? Citizen science is, as you mentioned, there are different activities. So it is actually an umbrella term of that describes a variety of ways how citizens, so lay people who lacks of a formal scientific training of a specific topic of interest. For example, in this case would be research ethics or environmental ethics, are actively participating in research in a meaningful way. So it could be by developing research questions, by contributing to data, by analyzing this data. And in general, citizen scientists are driven by real-world concerns, and they seek to contribute to public good. They seek also to address social issues. And the idea is that we have identified them in the project as among stakeholders, as a target group, so that we want to involve them throughout the project in the social labs, for example, to gather their feedback and real-world experience relevant to environmental and climate ethical issues. And also, for example, involve them in the pilots, where citizens will also contribute so that we ensure that the guidelines, that the recommendations, that the training materials also reflect and are adapted to the citizen scientists' needs. And afterwards, in the project also, we want to carry out trainings with citizen scientists, so that with these trainings, the citizen scientists themselves, as collaborators of research, are better able, better equipped to support with research and innovation for the green transformation. Yeah.
My very practical question would be, do we, I mean through you perhaps, know the citizen scientists so to say suitable for this project? I mean those who do something valuable for insight for us, or do they know us, maybe through some public announcement and contact us? Can it be both ways, or which one is predominant?
Usually it'd be good to, for example, identify them through projects or in which they are participating that are relevant to the topic. In this case, for example, could be environmental issues that are relevant to the project, from which through which we can contact them and see if they have interest in participating in them.
Does that mean you have a kind of database where you have, so to say, listed citizen scientists active in the field?
We have some, but this is also part of the Work Package 1 task that we'll be collaborating with to identify specifically which one of them. Mm.
Okay, more questions? Okay, out of my own ignorance, I kind of insisted on putting the Horizon Europe Ethics Appraisal Scheme experts here. But then I heard, no, it's clear who that is. But to be honest, I still don't know who that is. But let's combine it with the next keyword, because that's then targeting at them, I believe. We want to build capacity. So a kind of maybe epistemic capacity, and we want to get knowledge. We want to get knowledge of, I mean, theoretical kind, also of practical kind. And this results then in training these Horizon Europe Ethics Appraisal Scheme experts. So Mariëtte van den Hoven, can you tell us a bit more about that? Does that mean we teach them ethics? And who is them? What kind of experts is that?
You shouldn't ask me exactly who these appraisal scheme experts are. You can ask me what training pathways are. So there's a list. I think, Dirk, you can say more about it. There's a list of people who are reviewing proposals for Horizon Europe projects, and this group of people will be addressed. But it's only one of 4 target groups that we actually have. So we also have researchers that we want to target. We also have the citizen scientists that we want to target, so it's already addressed. The thing is that a training pathway or a learning pathway, it's something that we are all familiar with, but it's also a very abstract concept. So it's very simple, actually. You have pieces of a puzzle and you can put the puzzle together in different ways. So you have a specific aim, in this case, capacity building, you could say, but we have to determine in the competence profile that we will develop also in this project, what exactly we want to aim for each of the target groups and what makes most sense. So it will also be based on the needs and the knowledge and the skills that certain people in certain areas already have. And you can imagine that someone who is looking at grant proposals has a different kind of need and a different kind of knowledge than a student or an advanced researcher, and it matters in which discipline someone is. So a training pathway is actually a way to accumulate all these little elements that we are going to build as training modules, to bring them together in a way that it makes sense, and it also helps them to achieve their goal. It's as simple as that, you could say. And everyone is acquainted with it, because in educational programs, you often have, in every university program, you have academic skills trainings, for example. So it could be about oral presentation skills training, and it could be about writing skills, and it could be about anything else. Well, these are different elements, components, you could say, and we think that it makes sense to develop these, not only for the specific target groups, but ideally, Natalie and I thought, it would even be, yeah, this is really the ambition. Let's see if we can achieve this. But ideally, we could also make individual training pathways. So for everyone who wants to take some of our trainings, that we can, for example, via a test already determine what is your pre-knowledge and what do you need actually, what kind of skills, what are your needs to actually achieve the goal. So we will see how far we will get on more individual-based training pathways, but at least we will come with some training pathways that are for each of the 4 target groups relevant. That was a long answer, not saying anything about your Horizon Europe Ethics Appraisal Scheme experts.
No, I was focusing on them because, I mean, they are not students, and if we provide training pathways, knowing they don't come with student mindset, isn't that a challenge in itself to say, okay, they perceive themselves as experts, but we tell them you are kind of not expert enough, and here's something you need to add to your portfolio. I can imagine that's a challenge.
In the lifelong learning era where we live, I think many people will immediately acknowledge that they are not always skilled in everything. And if you want to keep up, that's basically the idea. You offer them these trainings. We'll do this in IREX, we will do this in other projects. So I don't see the problem.
I guess it has a lot to do with what we consider as training. Yeah? I mean, it's not the same thing as teaching something in algebra or a basic course in Latin and theology or something. It's much more a kind of reflective equilibrium between different types of experts. So the training for someone from environmental technologies in ethics and environmental technology training for those who are experts in ethics. So both is needed. You need several types of competencies, yeah, to understand where are the tricky problems in a technology and also what are the real ethical questions. Yeah. So it's much more a conversation in an interdisciplinary group, and we need good materials for that instead of a monologue from a teacher to a pupil or student. And because I'm myself in this group, so we have so often discussions among ourselves, how should we behave in this context? Yeah? What is the right answer? What should we consider here? Because it's not so easy often to detect the right problems and to give an appropriate answer. What can we recommend for this type of research project or so? And to have a more open debate on that would be a good step for a training process.
So you are one of them.
Yeah.
This is interesting because I had a totally different idea of that. I thought we talk about commissioners sitting somewhere in Brussels.
No.
But that's, okay. Then that changes this image already. Okay, good that we talked about it. Now we are in that last bit here, talking about the goals and the impact we wish to achieve. Also here I came across some keywords that I thought are maybe not too familiar to everyone. So especially for these last few, what interests the most probably is what does it mean practically for how we do the work in our project. So they are not just buzzwords. They should be, let's say, approaches that we really take serious and can maybe change the way we do it, let's say, compared to purely academic work. So first I want to ask Nakajima sensei from Tokyo University, when we say we take an international and intercultural perspective, why is it so crucial for this project? Yeah, from your perspective.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for your questioning. Yeah, and I'm very, excited at sitting here to think of the, our ethical future by facing the climate crisis or advanced technology problem. So maybe we are in a disoriented situation. We lose the orientation. So now we need some kind of reorientation, or in other words, reorienting, right? So in this phase, we have to better reintroduce so-called the orient. I have no romanticized image to orient. But now we once again think of the indigenous knowledge embedded in each regional culture. So in this respect, the orientation would be a necessary wording for our thinking. So maybe we are asked to radically change our social imaginary facing the many, nested crises, right? So in order to change our social imaginary, we need some de-defined vocabularies. For example, I insist that the human co-becoming instead of human being, which is highly European notion, loaded the onto-theological meaning. So if we change this human being to human co-becoming, the scene we are watching in the world would be changed. So likewise, if we change our vocabularies or wordings, so nature culture, that's a new compound. That's attempt would be very much useful for us to change our social imaginary. In order to change this social imaginaries, international or intercultural perspective would be very much useful. So it is not a top-down application of a universal values or universal concepts. No, it's a bottom-up universalizing process, right? So it needs a mutual dialogue and mutual transformation, right? So maybe in this respect, international perspective would be sine qua non. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This goes, if I understand correctly, in the same direction as the idea of the ecofeminism. I mean, in view of as ideal as possible discourse, to avoid, I know that as the term epistemic injustice, that we know more, so to say, by reaching out into the interspace between us or between me and another knowing entity, which could, of course, be most fruitful when that other being or becoming, as you say, is as far away from me as possible. The interspace might be bigger, so that's where the intercultural exchange is most fruitful. Is that an expression you would agree to?
Yeah. I completely agree with you. I have no romanticized image to Asia, Africa, and other regions, but I think we come to know we need to transform each social imaginary. How can we find a switch within a specific particular culture? Otherwise, we cannot make solidarity together with other cultures. But one culture is not isolated or, how to say, a blocked one. No. It's a highly complex system. Maybe we will be able to find a switch to transform the culture itself, right? By pushing that switch together, we will be mutually transforming together and to find another path to the solution of our nested crisis.
Thank you very much for this and for your question. Since we will be doing communication and dissemination, that usually we have in our minds the European audience and not the audience that lives in other continents. It would be interesting if we could make a very small exercise very early in the project, and that exercise could be to send you some very short posts that we are going to do via social media channels and via our news feeds, and perhaps have your view, if this is possible, on how we could, let's say, tweak it a little bit or adapt it in order to be more relevant to the norms of communication in Asia, for example. That would be super interesting. And being able to better communicate, I'm not saying about engaging other audiences, but communicating, emitting what we do in RE4GREEN in a more, let's say, cultural, sensitive way. That would be in itself a very nice project. So if you can help us a little bit on this to perhaps find some more common ground, I'd be very, very happy.
Yeah, thank you. Social imaginary, this is a word used by Charles Taylor, Canadian philosopher. His hero is Matteo Ricci, who was, a missionary in 15th century. He went to China and studied the many different layers of Chinese cultures, and he transformed, orthodoxical Christian discourses, which are somehow adapted to Chinese situation. Right? So afterwards, Matteo Ricci was severely criticized by Pope, right? Yeah, but this is a Riccian standard was very much useful for the communication over the different, cultures. So I think Matteo Riccian way would be useful for us to make a bridge over the gap of the different cultures. So in Islamic society, right now, there are booms to introduce the previous old commentaries to the canon, Quran, right? Younger generation intentionally uses such a old commentary to criticize the status quo, right? So such a layered situation would be embedded in each culture, especially in Asia. It is not homogeneous structure. No, it's a multi-layered structure. So maybe we come to be very much sensitive to such layers like Matteo Ricci. We will be able to make some, fruitful communication to transform each other. Yeah, that's my idea.
We have a question or comment here.
This is Borana from EARMA, the European Association of Research Managers. My question is for Panagiotis and the colleagues working with communication dissemination. So we said about the differentiation of the messaging to European and international target groups. I was wondering for the European target groups, how much we are advanced with the identification. So what are our layers, main target groups in Europe? Or if this is something that we'll be working together?
Thank you, Borana. As you know, there is already a plan, a strategy that has identified types of stakeholders. And in these types of stakeholders, we have also identified some institutions or networks or organizations relevant to these target groups. However, what we are going to do starting from today and continuing tomorrow, to have a little bit of group thinking and some brainstorming on bringing on these whiteboards there your ideas to augment this identification exercise that we did during the proposal writing, that we did before the kickoff meeting. And that, in any case, will be a dynamic process, because as we engage with more people, as we recruit people for the social labs, we will definitely have additional, perhaps not target groups per se, but additional types of organizations that could be brought into the social labs and with which we can communicate. In any case, there is no need, I think, to strictly define what is engagement work and what is work that has to do with communication and dissemination. Specifically in another project, we actually written a deliverable that treats the, let's say, passive communication, meaning that we are emitting information and they are received by our stakeholders without having to do nothing else. And the other side of the continuum, it is a continuum actually, they have to really engage in one of the co-development exercises. So this thing, I mean, it will be dynamic not only in temporal terms, as we get more wise and more knowledgeable about the different types of stakeholders, but also we will be able to move across this spectrum of passive communication and active engagement of stakeholders. So, to cut the long story short, we will have our eyes open and ears open to bring on board more types of stakeholders, or mainly more types of organizations relevant to the interests of the project.
If I may add to that, so absolutely, who are we bringing on board for our messaging? But I was thinking also later on how we are defining the messages for the different stakeholders, because it will be the policymakers who will need to define in a certain way, if we are addressing to the researchers in another way, research ethics advisors in another way. So this is, I think, something that we need always to keep in mind. I'm repeating this, I think, in many of our meetings, that the same message that does not speak the same to different target groups. And I also want to bring back what our policy officer from the European Commission, Mehlich, said earlier, that things might change as well in the next year. So we'll need to be also very careful what is key priority as well in terms of the policy agenda at the European level.
Just as a follow-up, thank you for that, Borana. And what we can do is to try to adapt these packages in different packages, meaning targeting different stakeholders. In any case, there are, in this plan, we have defined initially, tentatively perhaps, which communication channels should be used or could be used for different stakeholder groups. However, you meant about tweaking the same message for different types of stakeholders. Well, this will be another exercise that we should also take into account. And in that case, we should, let's say, interact, because everything is about interaction today, across, that means also within the consortium. For example, about how to best address things to policymakers, to citizens from outside Europe. Perhaps this is another very interesting exercise that we could do. But thank you for bringing that, let's say, to our discussion.
I think we will have a session on stakeholder engagement, but also, of course, a kind of training session on our communication and outreach activities, I believe. I want to give it the time it deserves to address the last 2 points for this session. One is a particular one, follow up to the intercultural perspective. It seems that thinking of something like epistemic injustice, it seems there's a special urgency to consider the global South inclusion. right? Maybe Rachel Weinberg, you can say a few words about why is that, or how would that impact our work practically?
Sure. So I think there are two components and they're a little bit different. And I think just the one is around equitable access to different kinds of resources and technologies that the Global South have in comparison to Europe, of course. And here it's about benefit sharing, but it's also about ethics dumping. So in other words, we can develop a very wonderful ethics tool and set of training modules, but if unethical practices occur elsewhere by European companies, which I think does already happen, they won't really necessarily help the cause. So I think we have to be very mindful about ethics dumping, and there's a lot of work that's been done through the Trust Project, which was also a European Commission project. In fact, the leader of the Trust Project will be with us this evening, which looked very much at equitable research, relationships, and how to prevent ethics dumping. But I think there's opportunity there to build on that around the technological component, because that wasn't very well developed through Trust. With regard to the second question around epistemic injustices, I think we know that the Global South holds a lot of the world's biodiversity, and a lot of these technological innovations will therefore have impact in the Global South. We're already seeing it through RED schemes, through people being displaced, through various carbon credit schemes and so on. I think we're all quite well aware of that. So what it means is that we have to take a step back and think about why injustices occur in the first place in the Global South. And almost all countries have had a history of colonialism, and many of the crises that are faced in those countries, biodiversity, climate crises, and many others, are deeply embedded in these colonial histories. But in addition to these historical legacies, they are also ingrained through what Quijano calls ongoing colonialities and power relations that continue to exist today. They are characterized by generally power, knowledge, being, and the newest one, which is, I think, still in the process of being conceptualized, is around the coloniality of nature. So in other words, the ongoing domination by foreign capital, which is sort of the coloniality of power, of knowledge through the privileging of Eurocentric knowledge and the epistemic injustices that have occurred through that, of being and of becoming, perhaps, affecting people's agency and dignity, and then the fourth dimension of colonialities of nature. And science, of course, is deeply embedded both within colonialism and these ongoing colonialities. And maybe you're coming to it later, but Harding, of course, differentiates between science with a capital S, which is science which has got the sort of the political nature and it's the instrument in service of politics and capital, and in science with a small s, which is the tool of inquiry and to support public goods. So just a quick example is around one of the areas of work I do is regarding agriculture and new seed technologies. And in my part of the world, we've seen that industrial agriculture and hybrid and genetically modified seeds have led to an epistemicide of knowledge and the kinds of knowledges that are sustaining biodiversity and biocultural diversity. We've shown across Southern Africa that there's been a dramatic decrease in farmer seed selection and exchange practices, in farmers' ability to adapt and to be resilient to climate change, largely because of the introduction of new seed technologies which are supposedly climate smart. So, these have far-reaching impacts beyond the ecological impacts on community cohesion and autonomy and livelihoods and so on. And similarly, in the climate space, we've seen that climate knowledge, the sort of very technocentric knowledge, tends to dominate politics, and other ways of knowing are often sidelined. So I think there's enormously productive space there to think about what this means for the Global South. And what does it mean practically for us? I had to think hard about that. How do we embed these sort of very more transformative approaches. So there's transition, but I think transformation seems to be coming out as a more appropriate term, perhaps. How can we shift away from these very expert-led knowledge systems, science with a capital S, towards recognizing other ways of knowing? I think that's come up a lot, plurality of knowledges. What does it mean if we shift worldviews from the one world to a sort of a pluriverse? How can we embed relational aspects? We haven't spoken much about relationality, but I think that's a core component of the nature-culture thinking. And then lastly, I was reading some of the project documents, and there's quite a strong emphasis on risk assessment in the documents. And I was wondering, what does that mean? Because risk assessments, by their very nature, are quite emblematic of a narrow worldview. They're quite technocentric, typically, in the way they're formulated. So what does that mean for us if we want to bring risk assessment in as a tool, but also think about other ways of knowing? How do we do that? So those were some of my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you very much. What forms in my head right now, correct me if the impression is wrong, that actually your two contributions, they show like two layers of importance here. One is, so to say, a conceptually one, that in our let's say overview of research ethics, environmental ethics, climate ethics, it would be wrong to have a very Eurocentric perspective and be very, very open for global perspectives. The other one that you put more emphasis on is, so to say, the dimension that it will have in the actual green transition approach. That if it doesn't deserve the label ethical if it ignores, let's say, its intrinsic impact on the rest of the world. If it stays, so to say, with the focus on Europe and ignores, so to say, the peripheric effects, so I mean geographically, especially the global south and others, it can only be a successful transition if it also has a global perspective. I think that's, so we consider that, so to say, in the very beginning of the project, but also, of course, in the very end, saying, okay, we need to anticipate the effects on the world, not just on Europe. There's
Thank you. Thank you for bringing up the idea of coloniality, because I think this idea that it's like continuing is very important, not just this idea that we had colonialism and now we're in a post or decolonial period. I'm wondering, with regards to the project specifically, how we would have this global perspective in a way that's not tokenizing or extractive. So the majority of the organizations within RE4GREEN are in the global north, and I'm wanting to raise the point of being aware of the fact that we're taking, in wanting to center knowledge from the global south, which we should do, we can maybe sometimes reproduce like colonial epistemology, because if we center this knowledge but just bring it into like the EU and this EU-funded project, and I'm wondering what's the methodologies for doing this in a way that's not tokenizing or extractive, and if that's been considered. Thank you.
You want to say something?
Yeah, I can respond briefly to that point, because it's a good point and something we thought about a little bit in the proposal stage. But kind of in the process of writing, the many things had to be finished, and exactly how to do what you just said was a bit thin. We have a proposal on this, but we need to develop it more. So basically the idea was, and you'll see this in work package 1, to use what the IPBES has already done for knowledge production with respect to nature and biodiversity, where what they did was they put together a kind of value typology and valuation approach that was co-created by indigenous and global south stakeholders and validated at several stages. So that's in RE4GREEN as well, that we're going to try to integrate some of those aspects. How exactly, to what extent, that remains to be seen. But we've thought about it a little. We want to keep this discussion going.
I want to come to the last point. I will skip the term open science here. I mean, I think it's more or less clear that it sits very well with the kind of co-creation idea of the project. And I also believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it has to do a bit with data management and so on. With the open science, one idea is that we share and so on. So we can get more information about that in that context. Okay, but then I want to give the last word actually to Dirk Lanzerath on the keyword trust in science, because we so far talked about this project as a kind of service for the European Commission. They want something from us, we deliver that. But I think in one conversation we had earlier, you pointed out another dimension, that is also that this project is a great chance to illustrate what academic endeavor is able to provide for, maybe that science with a capital S, like how that our work plays a crucial role in showing that we contribute something very important to the public debate.
Yes, I mean, projects like this have always, in a way, to do with trust in science and the relationship between science research on the one hand and society on the other hand. I guess several years ago, it was nearly naturally that people trusted in science. And I'm not sure whether this is anymore true. And there are several reasons why this is the case. It has to do with the media, it has to do with the social media, but it has also to do with science itself. Very often scientists think, oh, we have the truth. And I think this is also the wrong message from a scientific point of view. Scientists are always good when they are in their channel and their methodology for a specific problem. But we're talking about very, very huge problems, societal problems, scientific problems, problems of communication, etc., etc. And that means trust in science needs also to be supported by a certain type of communication process between the scientists in an interdisciplinary way, but also a good communication between science research and the society. And I think this is much what the project is about, to find good pathways for this type of communication and dialogues. And I would like to pick up one debate we had concerning ecofeminism and the question of Jan Berner concerning what is our role of scientists from an ethical point of view, and is it more than just being correct in our methodologies? We have in biomedical research for several years a very large debate on bias in clinical studies. Since many of the studies are studies on men between 30 and 50 or so. But it's considered as good medicine for human beings or human becomings. And this is bad science in that sense, because it's only shaped for a specific group. So this bias shows how this more ethical point of view is also an aspect on our types of methodologies. And this kind of thinking we need more to integrate in our methodologies, and also the way how we consider what is a good message from science to the society. And therefore, I think we have so many issues to debate on, in particular when we cannot address scientists always in the same manner. Okay, there are these different disciplines, but within these disciplines, there are those who are very open related to ethics. There are those who use ethics as a strategy because we need it for our funds. And there are those who are not interested in ethics at all. And how to address these, I mean, there are probably many more groups, but these are maybe important groups here. And how can we address these different groups and integrate them in our debate? And also, and this is a trust in ethics as science issue. We often say here, oh, it's an ethical problem. Here we have ethics, there we have ethics. When we look, for example, on a problem like the wolf. So when I look at the debates on the wolf in Europe, in Canada, but very much in Europe, from an animal ethics perspective, we look very much on how we deal with the wolf as as an individual. From an environmental ethics perspective, it's more about the ecosystem and how they behave with other populations of animals. When I think about it from a social ethics or business ethics approach, then I should integrate also the farmer's perspective. And these are very different ethical perspectives when we look only on one animal and how we should behave, considering the interest of an animal or an ecosystem or the farmers, or however. There's a very interesting documentation in British Columbia where it's even more complicated because there are a lot of wolves who endanger a small population of mountain caribous. And they have this approach, oh, we need to shoot down the wolves. But the problem is the habitats are too small, and the reason why is industry there. And there are people who say from an animal ethics perspective, don't shoot the wolf. And from an environmental ethics perspective, we should protect the mountain marabous. So, and that means we should shoot down the wolf. So even from this ethical point of view, we need to think, how can we trust in ethics where there are so many approaches, apart from the Kantians and Aristotelians and Rawlsians and however. So the interdisciplinary approach needs to be embedded in all these dialogues. So trust in science and research means not only trust in agriculture, in biology, in economy, but also how we deal in ethics with that as an academic discipline. So we have a lot to do.
That's true. And I mean, I'm sorry, we are like 1 hour behind the schedule, and I see some people sweating already who want to wrap this up somehow. Thank you very much. I think the exercise has shown that there's some importance in doing so. Yeah, we have talked about things. We also know things we didn't have a chance to talk about yet. So we go on from here. I'm very much looking forward to the next 3 years of exchange and learning process. And I hand the power over the schedule back to you.